Good morning, Richard McChesney here. Thank you for joining me for today's webinar, Introduction to Twinfield Analysis. Firstly, I know that some of you will be fairly new to Twinfield, others will be long-time users, some of you will be relative novices when it comes to using Excel, some of you will be experts. So we're going to cater this webinar towards the middle of the road. It is an introduction. Depending on what your thoughts are after watching the webinar, you're welcome to contact us and we can arrange further training, assistance with any reports you might be developing, or we can even develop the reports for you. So as I say, this is an introduction to what you can achieve using Twinfield Analysis. So to start off with, let's explain what Twinfield Analysis is. As you're aware, you're using Twinfield, which is a cloud-based accounting system. So all your data is sitting in the cloud, hosted on a Twinfield server. You log on to an internet browser to access your data from a point of view of data entry and from reporting. But when it comes to detailed analysis of your data, you will need to use something like Twinfield Analysis. What that does is it allows you to download your data to Excel, and then from there you can interrogate it to create reports, use it for detailed analysis and maybe extraction of information to create journals to re-import back into Twinfield, for example. So today what we're going to do is we're just going to look at a couple of examples of how we might use Twinfield Analysis. You've already seen at the start of this webinar some screenshots of some reports that we've created for other clients, and we're going today to create a couple ourselves, just to give you an example of what is possible and how easy it is to use. So firstly, let's start by looking at logging into Twinfield Analysis. That's easily achieved by going to the add-ins menu in Microsoft Excel, selecting Twinfield Analysis, log in and get data. I've already logged in, so it's got my details here, but you would enter your username, your password, the organisation, which is the organisation you log on to when you log into Twinfield on your web browser, and in this case we hit login, and in a few moments we'll see a list of all the companies that I have access to, which in this case is only one company. Depending on your setup, you may have access to multiple companies, and we see at the top of the screen a list of all the what's called Twin Cubes, which are the different data extracts that you can download through Twinfield Analysis. We're going to concentrate today solely on general ledger information, which we're going to look at the general ledger details in version 2 in your annual report. But firstly, let's just run through and have a look at what some of these Twin Cubes are. So general ledger details, as it says by name, it's a list of all your transactions within a defined period, and when you go to run the Twin Cube, you select various selection criteria. General ledger details version 2 is the same as general ledger details, but it has a couple of additional fields in it. General ledger intercompany is a list of all the transactions that have been entered into one company on behalf of another. And if you're using that functionality, you'll be aware that you can post transactions from one Twinfield company into another company. Annual report is a summary of the movement per general ledger code, period, cost centre, dimension 1, 2 and 3 effectively. One line per combination of those fields. Annual report is very similar, except only has year-to-date balances. It doesn't have the movement per period. And annual report MC is again similar, it's a slightly cut down version of annual report. And then after that we have various other Twin Cubes, customers, suppliers, fixed assets, time and expenses, and a few others at the bottom here. So as I say, we're going to look at the general ledger details one in detail today, but firstly let's just have a look at annual report. So if I highlight that, I select the company I want to get the data from. If I'm wanting to run a consolidated report, I can select multiple companies if I had access to multiple companies. Next, depending on the nature of the Twin Cube I'm running, it will then bring up a series of selection criteria fields. So in this case, I'm putting in the first period that I want to run the data for through to the last period. In this case, it's the whole for 2013 financial year. Hit next. I can then select the type of transaction I want. In this case, I'm going to just select provisional and final. If I wanted to, I could filter by general ledger account. I could also filter by dimension 2, being cost center, customer or supplier, depending on the nature of the twin cube, and dimension 3 being asset or project. And then in a few moments I have my, my data from the annual report twin cube. So if we quickly run through and have a look at this. As I said earlier, this is a summary of the movement per general ledger code, per period, per cost center, per asset if I was using assets or projects. So I see here general ledger account 001. Over here I see each of the cost centers, and I don't use projects or assets in this particular company. This information here, if I widen that, is for period 1, and if I scroll down, I see period 2 with the same general ledger code, same cost centers. And as I move across here, I can see the movement in base currency, in this case GBP, reporting currency, maybe another currency, and that's about it. If I had a default reporting structure set up, I'd also see that information in this twin cube. Okay, I'm not going to look at this in any detail today. What I'm going to do is focus on the general ledger transactions twin cube, and we're going to use that to create a couple of reports. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back now to add-ins, Twinfield Analysis, log in and get data. Remembers my details from last time. Hit login. I'll wait a few moments, and there it is. I want that twin cube today for that company. I hit next. And then I enter my selection criteria. Again, this time I want provisional and final. I don't want to filter on date of data entry or on modified date or on general ledger code, dimension 2 or dimension 3. And it's returned 600 odd transactions, which is what fit into my selection criteria. And this time, unlike the cube we had a few moments ago, we've got some additional information such as the transaction date, the transaction type, the transaction ID, date of data entry and who entered the transaction, and a few other fields, including the currency of the actual transaction, base currency, again GBP in my case, whether it was a debit or credit, the VAT information, etc., etc. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take what we've got now and look at how we can use that data in Excel. So really, all I've shown you now so far is what Twinfield Analysis can do. And Twinfield Analysis really is just a tool that you install on your computer that downloads the data from the cloud onto your computer, and then everything I'm going to show you from now on is using your skills within Excel. So what we're going to be looking at this morning is we're going to look at pivot tables, creating some graphs using the SUMIF formula and the VLOOKUP formula. They're probably the four main formula that you need to know how to use within Excel to make the most of Twinfield Analysis. So firstly, what we're going to do is we're going to take this data that we've got here and we're going to create a pivot table. To do that, highlight the data, go to the Insert menu, select Pivot Table. It highlights the fact that we've got from column A to column AQ, and it's going to create the pivot table in a new worksheet. Okay. Now, what we need to do first is within our pivot table, we need to decide what fields we want to put where. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the general ledger account code, account name should I say, and put it into here. When you have a list of all our general ledger account codes that have actually got transactions on them. So there may be general ledger accounts that actually exist within Twinfield that we haven't used, and they won't be listed here because this particular extract is based on the transactions, and it's only downloading transactions that actually exist. Any general ledger accounts that don't have transactions aren't being downloaded. What we're going to do is we're going to create a report that shows the movement in each general ledger code by period. So if we grab the period field and put it into columns when you have the periods going across the top. Likewise, we've only got periods 1 through to 9, because even though I ran the extract for periods 1 through to 12, there were no movement in those other periods. It's only in the first 9 periods. And what I want to do is I want to take my base value, put it down the bottom here. Firstly, it counts the number of transactions. I actually want it to sum it, so I'm clicking on the field there and changing this to say sum those. And now I have my movement per period. Now, the other thing perhaps what I might want to do is I might want to filter this and say I only want profit and loss counts. So up here I'm going to grab the field called dimension 1 type, drag that down to there. That puts this up here as a filter, and I can say I only want profit and loss counts. So far, so good. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to just show you how to refresh the data. And let's say that this value here, 16,000, actually, I know that it should have been 17,500 or 18,000 something, but there's a journal that we haven't put through for this period yet. Also, what I might do is I might change the name of that. That should be administration expenses, not admin expenses. So I'm going to go back to my other monitor and just pull over my Twinfield screen. I'm going to go to accounting, data entry, not data entry, sorry, recurring transactions. And I've got a recurring transaction here called prepayments. And I'm in period 9 of 2013, so I'm just changing my date here, period 9, 2013. And all I need to do is tab out of there and then hit process, or make it a provisional transaction, hit OK. And as I said, I thought we might also go and just rename that account. I'm going to accounting, and I'm going to dimensions, profit and loss counts. I'm going to type in administration or admin, click on that. Rename that, save, minimize that, come back to here. Now I can be on any sheet, it doesn't really matter where I am. I am going to go to add-ins, Twinfield Analysis, refresh data. It remembers what my selection criteria was last time, and in a few moments I've refreshed my data. Now, because I have a pivot table, what I need to do for that to update is I need to go to my data menu and hit refresh all, and hit OK. And something has gone wrong there. Okay, my account's now down the bottom because of whatever the sort order is it's defaulting to. My guess is it's the order the accounts have been last modified in, so I've got that account down there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to go sort, A to Z, and that's my account there. And you can see the 18,500. We put a journal through for 2,500 a few moments ago. So far, so good. What we're going to do now is we're just going to have a look at what we can do with pivot tables, or just very quick look. Let's say rather than by account name by period, I want it the other way around. So what I could do is I could drag that down there, for instance. Now I've got it by account name by period going down the page, each account name. And I could minimize that and so on. Possibly not what I want, but just an example of what you could do with a pivot table. Or I could say I actually want my general ledger codes sitting up here. So I want by period, by general ledger code going across the page. I don't actually want that, so I'm going to put it back to how it was a moment ago. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a graph showing that information, but I'm really only interested in my sales figures. So I'm going to filter this by typing in the word sales here. Hit OK. I now have only my sales, and you can see this little filter symbol here to show that it's filtered. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to click anywhere on a number. I'm going to go to Insert, select that I want a line graph. That one will do. and we'll just move that so as we can see it on the screen here, make it a little bit larger. Now, not exactly what I want. If I start, as you'll be aware, revenue is a credit value in the trial balance, and credit values are negative values. So I want to see the numbers as positive, even though they're negative. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on the vertical axis here, right-click, format axis, and I'm going to say reverse order. Close. I've still got negatives here. And the reason for that is that while it's in reverse order, my numbers in my pivot table are negatives. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to format number, so right-click, format number, and it goes to custom actually. And down here, where I've got the format that says put in 1,000 separator and put a negative sign in front of the negative number, I'm going to get rid of that, and I say put a negative sign in front of the positive number. There's always multiple ways of doing things, and we could put in a formula that multiplies everything by -1 or subtracts the, takes zeros less the value we started with or something like that, but this will do for the moment. Now, down the bottom, I have my labels sitting sort of above where I want them. Rather, I really want them below the bottom axis. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to left click on the axis. I'm going to go format axis. I'm going to select the axis labels, select high, and hit close. Now I've got them where I want. But what I really wanted was I actually wanted periods going across there, and I wanted the different sales types to be in my legend over the side here. So to do that, I go to, you have to bear with me a moment because I had a momentary lapse and forgotten. Click on your pivot chart tools up the top right, switch rows and columns. Now I click off that, and if I scroll down a little bit, you can see I've got my period numbers and my movement, and I can see my various trends in the different types of sales. So that's how easy it is to create a graph from your information within Twinfield Analysis. And you might say, okay, that's all I want. I might put that on a separate sheet, or just put it over the top of the numbers and make it the right size, etc. But that could be something that I'm fronting on my board report or presenting to management. Okay, so what we're going to do next is that's the only report I'm actually going to take you through the creation of from start to finish. And as I say, that's a very simple report. It took us just a couple of minutes to create. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a report that I've already created and show you how I created it. So we go to this report here, and interestingly, it has it doesn't actually show any information in it. The question is why. And what it was is when I had prepared this particular report originally, I'd based it on the twin cube, which is called annual report. When we ran the last of those twin cubes a few moments ago, we ran it based on general ledger transaction detail. So what I've done is I've just gone and refreshed the twin cube, and we're now looking back at the annual report one, which is what we looked at first at the start of this webinar. Okay, what I wanted to do is I wanted to take you through this and just show you how I put it together. I put it together yesterday. It took around about half an hour perhaps to put together. So while it looks quite smart, it's not actually a huge amount of work, but it's reasonably professionally looking, and it's definitely a good example of what you can do with Twinfield Analysis. So in my demonstration company, I have a shop, well, a company that has 4 physical branches, it has an online presence, has a head office. I wanted to create a profit and loss by branch or by shop. I wanted to put my revenue accounts, then I wanted to have a total, my cost of sales, I wanted to have gross margin and a percentage. I wanted to then list all my expenditure with a percentage, show my net profit and a percentage. Also with my percentages, I wanted to put in some traffic lights so I could see what stood out as being good and what stood out as being bad. So I'm going to show you how to do that, and then I'm going to finish off by showing you how I put those graphs together as well. So firstly, what I did is I had a hidden column here, or hidden row should I say, so I unhide that. What I did is I put in the each of the cost centers for each of the divisions of the company. I put in the labels that I wanted to have as my column headers. I put in my information in column A here, the way I wanted the report to appear, and then I put in a formula. So it's the first of the formulas we're going to look at. It's called VLOOKUP. Basically what it means, if I read through this, is look up the value that is in cell A6, which in this case is 002, my general ledger account code. Go and find that value in column F. Don't worry about the fact that there's column G there as well. It's looking in column F. Find that, and then look in the second column after that, which is why I have the G here, and give me the value from that column. And the false means I want an exact match, I don't want a close match. So if I escape out of there and go and look at that, what I'm looking for in column F of TwinCube, find the value 002, column F, go down, find the first occurrence of 002, go over to the second column and give me the description that comes out of that column. And that's what I have here. 005, it's given me the value of dress size of sales dresses. And if I go to here and scroll down, I find 005 and sales dresses, and so on and so on. Now, I could have done the same at the top here, and that's what we're going to do now, just to show you how that VLOOKUP formula works. I'm going to say equals VLOOKUP. What you're going to see is when I put that open bracket, it tells me what to do next. So it's saying lookup value. What do I want to look up? So I want to look up that. Where do I want to find it? Now, the table array, as you may remember, on the last one I had TwinCube column F to column G. Now, the reason I need that is firstly, the first column is where it's going to look for that information. So it's going to look in this column here, in this case, for the cost center, column I, and it needs to go over at least one column because I want to get the data out of the second column. In this case, I'm just going to drag it across to column O, which is 7 columns, just to show you what would happen. And then I'm going to put in a comma, and then I'm going to put in number 7, and then I'm going to put in false for exact match. And hit enter. Now, what I will see when I hit enter is I'm looking for cost center 001, just before I hit enter, 00001, and I've said look across 7 columns. So it's going to look across 7 columns. It's going to find the first occurrence of 00001, and it's going to tell me that in the 7th column I've got -200. So let's see what happens. And that's what happens. So if I tell I only want to look across 2 columns, I have shop London. Go back to here, find cost center 00001, look across 2 columns, I have shop London. Likewise, if I said only look 1 column, it will return itself. Okay, so that's good. I wanted to say shop London. What I probably want to do if I'm going to do that is I probably want to just highlight that row and format cells, and under alignment, put word wrapping, so that word wraps, and just make that a bit bigger, so that it puts it onto 2 lines. So, in theory, what I should be able to do is just copy that, put it into the next cell, paste. So why doesn't it work? And the reason it doesn't work is if you compare that column, it says VLOOKUP D3, which is D3, but then it says look in TwinCube column J to column P, whereas in this one it was column I to column O. And what the problem is when I copy my formula, it's copying or moving the relative lookup over 1 column as well. So rather than column I, it's column J, the next letter over. Rather than column O, it's column P, which is the next letter over. So to resolve that and stop that happening, what I need to do is I need to put a dollar symbol in front of both of those. Dollar symbol isn't because I'm a New Zealander and I prefer dollars over pounds. It is because Microsoft decided the dollar symbol was a good symbol to use as what they call an anchor. So now what happens is if I copy that, put it into there, get paste, I get exactly what I want. 00002, shop Liverpool, let's go and check. 00002, shop Liverpool. So the next one should be Manchester, Glasgow, etc. Go back to here, wrong sheet, go to here, and what we'll do is, rather than copying, down the bottom here is a little square box. If I just click on that, I can drag that across, and it copies them as I go. So far, so good. Okay, so having looked at VLOOKUP, what I'm going to look at now is the SUMIF formula. If we go over and look at the total here, I have a formula that says minus, and the reason for the minus is I want to show a credit value as a positive, minus SUMIF twin cube column F, P&L, which is this sheet, cell A6, and twin cube 00. Now, so what that's telling me is have a look in column F, which we'll go and look at in a moment, find what's in cell A6, and if there's a match, sum what's in column O. Let's escape out of there and have a look at it. So cell A6 has 002. If I go to here, what I'm saying is look in column F, find all the 002s, go across to column O, and total them all up. And obviously there's multiple periods, so we don't see them all just sitting there. We've got more 002s down here, for example. So that's fine. Next one down there is doing the same thing. Find 005 and look in column F for that. Sum it up if there's a value in column O. Now, anything worth pointing out there? No, there's nothing else worth pointing out there right now. What I have got next is I've got a slightly more complicated version of the SUMIF formula. And that is because against each shop, sorry about that, I just dropped the microphone. Against each shop, I need to look both at the nominal ledger code or general ledger code, and I also need to look at the cost center. So the formula in this case is SUMIF with an S on the end of it. And it's slightly different. In this case, we're actually looking at the column we're going to sum first, column O, and then we're going to say if we find in column F in the twin cube sheet what we're looking for, which is the value in cell A6, then if we also find in column I the value that's in cell C3 in this sheet, then sum, otherwise we don't sum. So what we're saying here is in the twin cube sheet, look in here for the 002s, but also look in here for the 00001. If that combination and that combination are the same, or what we're asking for, then give us the sum of that, and for each individual period. Now, what you'll notice here is the dollar anchor symbols. Firstly, when we created this, we put anchors in front of all the columns in twin cube because as we copied that across, we wanted those columns to stay the same. We put a anchor in front of the A for when we were looking at the general ledger code, again, because as we copied across, we wanted it to stay the same. When we got to looking for the cost center, we actually put an anchor in front of the number 3 instead. And the reason for that is as we copied down, we want the 3 to stay the same, but over here, we want the 10 to change to a 9, to an 8, etc. as we move back up the individual rows. So hopefully that makes sense. Now what I also did is I thought, well, potentially we might want to run this just as a summarized report. So I grouped it, and what I've done is if I click on that and I click on that, I now have my sales, cost of sales, gross profit, expenses, net profit, and that could be bold with no detail. I can expand that by clicking on there, and I've expanded. Now that's a fairly straightforward process as well. Firstly, I need to remove that grouping. So I'm going to highlight those rows. I'm going to go to Data and Ungroup, and that's gone. To group something, I click on the line at the top, the first line I want to be suppressed if it's grouped, down to the last line I want to be suppressed if it's grouped. Click on Group, and you can see now I've got this minus symbol. Click on that, and it compresses it. Click on that, and it expands it. Nothing too difficult there. So the next thing I did is I put in some formulas, subtotal things. So that there is just a simple formula that subtotals the line above it, or the lines above it. This one here is the same as what we've seen, except it's got no negative because the expenditure is a positive number. And then we have a formula that says one minus the other using the gross profit. This here is a formula that is, it's not too complicated, but I'll just explain it, and I'll explain it by clicking over here. If I look in cell column H, I don't have anything that I want to do a calculation on. So what I've said is, if H12 equals 0, then put in nothing. So you can see here there's actually nothing there. And the reason for that is if you try and divide by 0, you get an error. And that's what the rest of that formula does. It says if it's not 0, then take H17 divided by H12. H17 being the gross profit over H12 being the revenue. And in this case, exactly the same thing. G11 over G12 gives me 32%. So that's how I get my percentage calculation. Now, how did I get the red and green? What I've done is I've used a thing called conditional formatting. And that is from the home menu here, you have a conditional formatting menu. And if I click on that and go to Manage Rules, you can see I've got two rules here. The first rule says if C18, which is this cell here, is less than I18, and see I've got the dollar anchor symbol to, as I copy it across, it wasn't going to change the I18, but would change each of the other columns. If C18 is less than I18, then show it in red. If C18 is on the second row, if C18 is greater than I18, show it in green. And just to show you how I created those, if I go highlight that first one and go Edit Rule, you can see in here it's just a formula equals C18 less than I18. And then I've got red, and I can have different other formats as well. I can say I want it to be bold as well, perhaps. Hit OK, and hit OK, and OK, and you can see that just changed to bold. Now, I could say that in this case, it's saying if it's below the average being 46%, then show it in red. If it's above the average, show it in green. But I could say perhaps that if I go back to my conditional formatting, Manage Rules, we'll edit this. I could say just if it's below 40%, which is 0.4 or 0.4, hit OK. And if it's above 0.6, and then when I hit OK, that's got no formatting on it because it fits within the tolerable margin, and we only want them highlighted if they're outside of the expected margin. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to highlight that cell and go Format Painter. I'm going to drag that across there, let it go. That copies that formatting to each of those cells that I just highlighted. So this one's highlighted because it's above the 60% margin. This one's not because it's within the tolerable range, and these two are below the tolerable range. Hopefully that makes sense. I've done exactly the same down the bottom here. Very similar formula, very similar conditional formatting. The next thing I did was I created some graphs. So I've got a pie graph here that shows, for instance, that when I hover my mouse over it, that the Liverpool branch has got a 26% share of the total revenue for the company. And if we have a look at the numbers, Liverpool 112,000 against 434,000 is 26%. 28% for Manchester, which is slightly more there, and the other shops share the rest. When it comes to net profit, if I put my mouse over here, I can see that Liverpool has 50% of the total profit of the company. So again, looking at, that's interesting. So looking at that, it says that Liverpool has 50% of the total profit, but the total profit of the company is actually only 11,000. So I'm not exactly sure how the formula works there, to be honest. But you can see that based on the numbers that we're seeing there, I'm just trying to work out what it is based on these numbers here. No, that's not even right. I'm not too sure how that number is made up, to be honest, so let's just ignore that, but you can see what the graph is doing. I'm going to show you how to create a graph, and it's a fairly straightforward process. Let's say we wanted to create a pie graph showing shirt sales. What we're going to do is we're going to highlight the 5 retail branches, and we're going to highlight the shirt sales numbers. We're going to go to Insert, Pie Graph, click that option there, and we now have, if we just, well, doesn't want to do that, undo, I'll click off it and back on it, we'll just move that over to there, and we'll just take it over there so it takes a bit more space. We now have a graph that shows, for instance, that Liverpool has 28% share of the total shirt sales for the company. Now, having done that, what we might want to do is we might want to actually have a little title at the top. So we can right-click, go Select Data. You can see here that data is currently called Series 1 because it didn't have a label for us to highlight, or we could have highlighted that there when we created the graph, but what we're going to do now is we're going to hit Edit, click in here, and we could either type in shirt sales, or we can just click over here, and that's going to say that the header row, or the header for the report, will be the value that's in cell B6. Hit OK, hit OK, you can see that. And if we wanted to, just to show that, we could just write in test there. You can see that the name of the graph has changed. Okay, what else do we want to look at here? Let's say we didn't want a pie graph, we wanted a bar graph. Simple process, right-click, change chart type, select bar graph, hit OK, we now have a bar graph. So that is a fairly simple and straightforward look at what we created here with the using a few different formulas, some of VLOOKUP. We'd already looked at pivot tables, and now we're having a second look at graphs. So what else can we do with Twinfield analysis? Another example put together by one of my colleagues is a working capital report. So what we've got here is we've got our different working capital categories and current assets, debtors, bank, and liabilities. We've got trade creditors, etc., and our net working capital. We've got here, and this is the part that's in blue that we would print. The part over here would possibly even be hidden. Just highlight those 2 columns, right-click, and go hide, and we've got rid of them. They're just for working purposes. Hit undo, and we'll see what they are. What I've got down there is a number 1 to 12, my 12 months of the year, and the labels or the names of those months. And they are for this drop-down menu here. I can change this here, and I can make that March. You can see that my number's changed. The number up here changed because when I change this, it's picking in this case, say April is the 4th month. It's the 4th option in my drop-down list, and so it's putting the number 4 here. And then the formulae are all looking at that and saying get the appropriate value. Now they're actually a little bit more complicated than that, but what it is doing a SUMIF, like we saw earlier, looking in column J of TwinCube 1, which is hidden over here, which is a extract that has been run actually out of a different company. come back to here, and it's looking at cell E5, whereas I just said that the period number was cell whatever that month, that one is L2. So if we go and have a look at E5, we've got a formula in here we can see at the top, which has got a formula that is referencing cell L2 and saying less than or equal to. So basically, because it's a balance sheet account, we don't want just the values in period 4, we want the values in period 0 to period 4, the opening balance and all the movement for the year to date. Likewise, this one here is looking at cell F5, and if we go and type in F5 here, look at the hidden, because you see cell row 5 is hidden, but in cell F5, we've got something very similar. And that's how that works. Fairly straightforward, can put that together in 20 minutes or less perhaps. And this is all using the Twinfield Analysis data download. Okay, so what else can we do with Twinfield Analysis? What I did is I just put together, as you saw at the very start of the webinar, some screenshots of some various reports that we've done. So if I take a look at them, this one here is a graph of the top 10 or 11 by looks of it customers for the company, and it's showing my total sales to date and my total profit on those customers. So this customer here, they account for 20% of my sales for the period I've just run this report for, and roughly 20% of my profit as well. Next customer, maybe about 15% of my sales, but I'm actually making a loss when I sell to them. Whereas this customer here, only a small portion of the value of my sales, but a huge percentage of my gross margin. So an interesting report shows that really, in this case, if we only ever sold to Stars and Stripes, we'd probably be more profitable as a company than if we sold to all the other customers. Close that, and let's open it using Microsoft Office, and we can flick through them. So this is a bar graph just showing visually the outstanding balance at the end of the month, or when I run this report, for each of my top customers. Move on to the next one. This is interesting perhaps to accounting practices where you might want to analyse your data entry on behalf of your clients. So this is a graph that shows a pivot table and a graph that shows the total sum of each transaction type, and then visually showing it down here. Could be useful for charging purposes, for instance, or for analysing your productivity. Balance sheet, so similar to the working capital spreadsheet that we just looked at a moment ago, works the same way, but presents a balance sheet in a format that may be suitable for board or management reporting purposes. This is the P&L that we looked at a few moments ago, working capital that we looked at a few moments ago, and then if we close out of there and take a look at this one, just to finish off, this is a actual versus budget spreadsheet that I put together for a client. I've taken out all confidential information by the looks of things. I've got the same sort of expansion ability that I showed you earlier with the other graph, other spreadsheet we looked at. Actual for each month, budget for each month going across the page. And then right over the right-hand side, I've got the year-to-date actual and whatever period we've run this for, April through to September, year-to-date budget, the variance for the year, and the full year budget for the full 12 months. What I've been able to do here is I've been able to put in various subtotals for various revenue accounts, cost of sales, and then categorise the expenditure into different categories as well. So as you can see, you can do a lot of different things with Twinfield Analysis. Hopefully we've just shown you a couple of examples there today. The last thing I needed to point out is that there is a charge for using Twinfield Analysis from a data download point of view. Now it's not too expensive, and but it is something you need to be aware of, that whenever you run Twinfield Analysis, you're downloading data. If you use up to 2 megabytes in a month, then there's no charge at all. Between 2 and 10 megabytes is a £5 per user charge, and over 10 megabytes is 50p per user per megabyte. Now you can access that information from within Twinfield. So if we go back into Twinfield and we go home, and you'll see on the home menu under General System you've got Statistics, and you can see here in my company, or my test company, me as a user, I've downloaded 1.5 megabytes during the month. Now, give you a rough example, when I put this screenshot together, this 228K was downloading 5,000 rows. So you need to download about 50,000 rows, perhaps, give or take, depending on what TwinCube you're running, about 50,000 odd rows before you would start incurring a charge. After that, you could download many, many thousands of rows again before you start paying per megabyte. Okay, hopefully I've covered everything that you need to know. By all means, contact us if you would like further information. Just email ensupport@twinfield.com, and we will talk to you again sometime. Thank you.